all good. It was like a grandma thing.
Totally.
Yeah, no, it's good though. Not like bad, like scary bad. Just he just had to handle it. Well, we're live. We're back for Under Pressure Live. New time tonight. Hopefully, this will be a good time for people to hop on. But tonight, I want to jump back into last week's conversation. Last week, we posed the question: is it the wrong time to grow? Things are obviously changing. In a lot of ways, the consumer economy is slowing down. We are officially in a recession, but I think a lot of us have been feeling some of these things, for the last several months. Inflation is up, things are expensive right now. And the question is really, what are we going to do about it? So we had just done the podcast and I'm over on LinkedIn and I'm scrolling on LinkedIn and I come across this post that just kind of set me back. I was like, this is what we were talking about. And so I got together with Jeremy. I said, hey, man, come continue this conversation. So today we have Jeremy Turner from Apply Pressure. And you're in Dayton, Ohio. He has a pressure washing business there, and he's making big changes. So he's leaning into what's going on and saying, hey, how do I proactively set myself up for how the world is changing instead of waiting to see what happens? So I thought we could dive into some tactical stuff today, that we could talk a little bit about like, what's his strategy? Why is he doing it? And then maybe some things that if you hear this, you're like, hey, this is something I could put into place in my business. So Jeremy, thanks for hopping on. Thanks for having a conversation and taking some time. We really haven't had a chance at all to talk going into this. So this will just kind of be exploratory as we go, but man, thanks for being on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So to give just a little bit of context, because I'm curious too, I love business stories. So I was doing a project for a while where I was interviewing business owners. I was wanting to interview like 100 guys that had kind of gone from, real technician minded to like business owner minded. How did you end up getting into business for yourself? Is that something you always knew that you would do, or is it something more recent? Tell me a little bit about what that journey is.
Well, really, I think looking at the beginning of it is never something I really thought about doing. I was in the Army for 8 years. I got my MBA at Wright State up there in international business. At Wright State, that took me about 6-7 years. I went into the workforce. I've done construction jobs. I've worked all through high school and college. Most recently, I was at Chase Bank and RL Carriers doing logistics. And before I went into business for myself, I was at Chase Bank doing relationship banking, basically helping people bridge the gap between just a normal banking relationship and then financial advising. And so when COVID popped off, there was a big tendency in the culture there to just kind of pull off and kind of let everybody fend for themselves. And that's not something that I really was appreciative of or wanted to be like. So I kind of popped out of there. And I was looking at what am I going to do? I think everybody played with the stock trading game at some point or another. But through that, I found some folks that I really liked in the local community. We started working out together. Actually, my friend Devin introduced me to my buddy Nate, who has a pressure washing company in Mansfield. And so I went to work for him for a little bit and, just enjoyed it because in the Army, I had a loud mouth, so I was always getting in trouble. So I was always cleaning. So I developed a love for cleaning things just because it was simple. The pleasure of it, like at the end, you knew you had a good job. You could see the job you did. It was tangible. So it was an easy transition into doing the pressure washing. And it was, as far as full ownership, it just came from always having a cap everywhere I went to where the company would cap you based on what they believed your value was. And at the end of the day, you can supersede that value. So to me, I wanted to set sail on my own, like put my own flag on the ship and say, hey, I'm going to be completely responsible for everything from top to bottom. And then you get that bug, that entrepreneurial bug, and you start like me, I'm a big reader. So I was reading everything from essentialism to Think and Grow Rich to extreme ownership, profit first, just basically developing any type of knowledge I can about this new entrepreneurial journey that I was on. And I kind of fell in love with designing systems and processes, and that's the past year I was working it by myself, but I got a couple techs now, moving into getting an office managers and getting an office. It's just been an awesome journey so far.
You said a lot of things there, and I started to realize I wasn't going to be able to remember what to go back to. I'm like, crap, I got to make some notes.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to go back. I want to touch on a few things before we talk about your business now. So you said you got an MBA while you were in the Army. What did you hope to do with that? What motivated that?
Really, I just had a big enjoyment of like strategy in business. And I never see myself as a finance guy or an accounting guy or a salesman. I see myself as the guy in the clouds looking at the map here and the landscape and figuring out how we're going to get the team from point A to point B the most effectively. Like the strategy, the tactics of business interested me highly. So I felt I needed to be a generalist in all the fields as far as that have to do with business. And I felt that degree was the best way to do that as far as just getting good experience and knowledge in every respective field.
How do you feel like having a master's degree in business has played into becoming an entrepreneur? Like, was it helpful? Was it not helpful? Was it, like, oh man, I really took this and it's like allowed me to do something, or, oh my goodness, we didn't study anything that was relevant to what I'm doing now. Like,
I think the biggest benefit was the networking and being able to speak the language, so to speak. Because I grew up very humbly, and if I didn't have that college experience, I would have had no exposure to how kind of a lot of the other side think and act and move and talk. So I go back and forth in that a lot. Sometimes I think, man, I wasted so much of my time because now I'm out on my own doing my own thing. I don't need a degree. You know what I mean? Like I read more and learn more from my continued education that I teach myself, and like instances like this when I get to connect with somebody who has real world experience. But I don't live thinking, oh, I regret doing that. I see the pros and cons to it because there are both. You get a little bit of debt, but the Army paid for a good portion of it. I enjoyed the experience, and I don't think I could be exactly where I am without that experience, because it's led me on a sequence of events to be where I'm at today. If I could do it again or advise people, I would say it depends on if you enjoy going to school, because I believe if I could restart, if I identified what I enjoyed doing most and just believed in myself more, I would have went straight for that.
What's the biggest lesson that you learned from getting an MBA that you've applied into your business?
Ooh, the biggest lesson.
Like shorten the cycle for all the rest of us that didn't go that path. Like,
I would say learning how to program your brain, because that was a big thing, because you get so much thrown at you to where you have to do this much work in this amount of time. And so you're identifying key points, and to me, it helped me figure out when do I need to get in the weeds and when do I need to get out of the weeds. It figured out how to teach myself how to learn. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson.
I like that. That's good. So you said something else when we were going through the story. You said the places that you worked, when you had a job, when you're doing something, there was always a ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And I can relate to that. When I was growing up as a child, I remember, people asking, what do you want to do when you grow up?
Mm-hmm.
And, you kind of, there's only so many jobs that as a kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had a problem with all of them because I thought if I did that, there's a ceiling, like somebody's going to tell me what that is. So that's not going to work. So I never had like there wasn't anything I wanted to attach myself to, because I think that's like the most depressing thing in the world, is to have a glass ceiling over top of you. It's like, why even bother here?
Yeah.
If it's not undone. So I think I can relate to it. Like, I feel like that kindred spirit, and that's a big motivator for me. Was that probably what pushed you the most, kind of going from being in a banking environment to, I'm going to go out, even though, you had a really white collar career,
Mhm.
and pressure washing is very blue collar. But is that what it is? Is that kind of allure of like, I can go make my own thing and nobody's going to tell me what it's worth but me? I mean, is that like the biggest push that got you out into that? Or I don't know. Cause I mean, for me, that's such a huge motivator.
I think it's very related to that. If I had to like tweak that a little bit, I would just say it's, to me, the true definition of freedom. Because I mean, you take that lion in a cage metaphor, like you get fed everything, but you don't get to roam. And if you roam too far, you might end up in someone else's territory type thing. With the freedom of being an entrepreneur, like you're fully responsible, and that's exciting. A lot of people see it as, and I do too, at sometimes see it as very, very challenging and stressful. I mean, I'm stressed all the time, but it's a good stress. It's a good stress, in my opinion. And I feel like, a short amount of time, 5, 6 years working for yourself and building for yourself, you get the full tangibility of that for the rest of your life. Like, not only the experience that it gives you, but everything you're building, you have control of. 20 years down the line, if you want to sell, you can sell. If you want to get royalties, you can get royalties. If you still want to own everything, operate everything, it's all up to you. And I think that's probably the best part, because nobody can tell me I can't tell people God bless you because it's not the proper environment or something. I'm going to say what I want to say.
You talk about the stress. That's definitely just part of it. You mentioned going through reading Extreme Ownership, and I just recently went through that book. Man, I mean, it's so good.
It is good.
I went through Extreme Ownership. I'm about to finish up The Dichotomy of Leadership, because I was just so like hooked on it. Like, I just kind of had to keep on the train of thought. One thing I've heard Jocko say is, coming from somebody who's learned how to operate in like really high stress situations, that's part of it. But the enemy is not like the stress. The enemy is, being able to operate logically and rationally and not let emotion, rule those situations. Do you feel like, and I maybe this is like a big stretch. Do you feel like having a background in the military kind of helps you be non-emotional in stressful situations, or is that something you still battle? Because I battle it a lot.
I battle it a lot too, because I've been told I'm an ass, and and it's like sometimes I've got to be, and that's when the military comes out with me. Like, I'm very mission oriented. I don't want to hear about people's feelings. Like, oh, I understand, like if somebody's sick or something, okay, but I don't want to hear about, oh, I just didn't feel like doing this. I'm like, no, this is what we got to get done to get to here. This is the set expectations that we had. Like, when I'm hiring, it's very, very clear. It's very, very clear. And there's a process to get even to that interview. And by the time you're on, you know exactly what you're in for. And if we come to a point where it's like there's complaining, I don't understand that. It's illogical, because we had preset expectation and agreement. It's in writing. We've talked about it. You're getting well compensated. So things, I guess, to get back to the question, sometimes I'm over here and I'm like, man, I need to bring it back. And sometimes I'm back and I'm like, man, I need to get it back over here. So it's a constant, I think it's flux, it ebbs and it flows, and you figure out, what situations do I need to be more strict and what situations do I not need to be? You never get it perfect, but you always progress.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I think that, we're never going to stop battling with, because life's emotional. By the way, you got a shout out here from Joseph.
Oh,
Jeremy
Joe?
is the man.
That's you, Joe. That ain't me. That's you, Joe.
had to throw that out there. So kind of going back to your business, Tell me a little bit about it. So how long have you had your business?
So I guess I can give you the rundown. I started researching all this stuff last December, and I hit the ground running last March. First job was the third week of March 2021 for like $50 or something like that. You know what I mean? It's just getting my feet wet. And then the lifelong curse I have had is eyes bigger than my stomach. I just wanted to do everything. So I offered this wide range of services. I shot a very wide net, and then I failed at things and I excelled at things. So the things I failed at, I was like, I'm just not going to do those anymore. The things that I excelled at and the things I enjoyed, I figured out a way to add value to where I could do a lot more of that. And then I had the challenge of where do I want to find myself pricing wise. So I guess that first year was all about experimentation, and a big part of that was looking at my numbers and finding like tangible, because it's a very emotional roller coaster, the being out on your own and being entrepreneurial. So you've got to have a tether like to the line of where you can tug and be like, okay, this makes sense to do this move. It's not just an emotional move because, you know what I mean, I'm down today or I'm up today. So when I'm looking at something like my conversion ratio and I've got my general prices and I'm saying, hey, you know, I'm landing 65% of my jobs, I need to up my prices. So it's nice to set those rules. And so year one was experimentation and rule setting. And then I kind of went backwards. Most people grow something and then try to find a way to make it profitable. My idea was like, let me find what's profitable and then I can grow it. And that's kind of where we're at this year is, okay, now I know what we're doing. It's all this stuff right here. Okay, I found the key personnels and I designed a system to I went through like 72 or 73 people to find 2 techs. And then now it's more of identifying what tasks are not qualified of my time, and not in like an arrogant way, but in a way that I can't be going and picking up sand and sealer if I could be going to apartment complexes and landing $20,000 quotes. So what things do I ask who on rather than how? And so that's big. Like you mentioned, going from the technician to the owner, that's what this year has been all about, is like setting hard boundaries for customers. Like, yo, we're not coming out for anything less than $200. Or if you want to cancel, you got to give us notice. So setting those things and sticking to it. I've severed a lot of relationships just based on people not being professional with you, like not having all their information together and causing you to come out and out and out and out. And you only have so much capacity, and you got to figure out, like, have you ever read the pumpkin plan? You got to figure out who your pumpkins are and who your weeds are, and you got to get the weeds out. And sometimes those weeds can be really great people, but they're just not aligned with you. And so they become a weed. And then it's about developing a relationship with your pumpkins. And so now that I'm growing a team, it's about effective communication is a huge thing. So I like the acronym FOCUS, which you've got basically communicating the right things at the right time. And that's a big part of it. I forget what each of the individual letters mean because I just got put on the spot by myself there. But we're working on communication a lot right now because it's harder than you think. Like, where do we send the pictures to? Okay, they need to go to the file here. That way the office manager can pull them and make the before and after photos. You don't need to be texting me. When do you need to reach out to me? You don't need to reach out to me every time there's a little hiccup. That's why we instilled the $150 rule. Like, if you can fix something for less than $150, just go do it. You don't need to call me for every little thing. Like, we've had that design that you're a leader in the field. The people that bring on, you are leaders. You get creative room, and you can estimate things and quote things. You get 5% upsells. I'm just giving you the tools and unleashing you. If I've got to micromanage you, there's no reason to have you. And I firmly believe that.
So just to kind of circle back on the pumpkin plan, you brought it up. So just to give everybody a little bit of context here, because there's like some wisdom I think you can kind of take away and go apply this. So the story draws on the analogy about people that grow like those like really big pumpkins that they do for like contests, right? Like biggest pumpkin in the county kind of thing, right? So how do you do that? And ultimately it comes down to being really selective about choosing the right pumpkins and ignoring the ones that are never going to get there. Not because they're not good pumpkins,
That's right.
not because there's anything wrong with them, but you have to be really, really selective. And so I think that's really cool how you've kind of taken that concept and you're like, I want to apply this to my business, because the pumpkin plan is like, there's a lot about like growth and leveraging relationships and all these like cool things in the growth plan. Like, I was a pumpkin plan strategist for a while, so you hit a nerve, but ultimately there's this idea that we only have so much bandwidth, we only have so much nutrients, we only have so much time and resources to pour into things. And so we have to be very selective. And you talked about that with your services, how you set up your systems, how do you set up your things. It's not about like, oh, that's beneath me. It's about, I've got to put my time where it's going to push the needle the most.
That's right.
And the same thing with the other people on my team. So yeah, I just want to bring that around. If anybody, you want a book on business growth that talks about marketing and growth strategies that are not like what you're getting out there, in traditional marketing talk, totally different way of looking at it. Like, it's something I highly recommend. I apparently made an impact on you too, but
oh yeah.
So I definitely recommend that as something to look into. So it seems like you've had like really rapid growth. I mean, in this post that kind of got my attention, you've hired techs, an office manager, a marketing manager, you're doing these new services. Like, a lot of you didn't get into this to just do some washing yourself. What's your vision for this? And then I want to hear that, because I'm very interested, like where you're trying to take this. But then two, I want to hear about this, like, the rapid growth that you've experienced, because I think it's a lot more than what most businesses would see in the first couple of years.
Yeah. First of all, it's a blessing and a curse. And I lead with blessing. I would say, let's break that down. Okay, the first part. What was the first part?
What's your vision for all this? Where are you taking it? Because you're not just messing around.
Yeah, I want to hit 1 million. I want to hit 1 million as fast as possible, and I can do it within 4 years. Next year, we're going to be hitting 6, and then the year after that, we're going for 1 million. Next year, that's going to look like, if we're looking at an organizational chart, I'm going to have lead tech. They're going to have technicians, not assistant technicians, technicians. And you got to be very careful on how you word things, because people can subconsciously feel like they can be lazy if they've got assistant in the front of their name. So you got 2 technicians, each with a lead technician on them, and then an office manager in place, a customer service rep to kind of filter things to the office manager that'll filter things to me. And then you have the production manager. That's what it's going to look like by the end of next year. In spring, we're going to have basically all those people minus the production manager. And we're going to have our warehouse. I got that picked out right up the street up here. So next year is going to look like that. What we're doing this year to kind of turn it into a full, because pressure washing in Ohio, it's a 7-month thing. And so we just added Christmas lights. I think you can see them down there on the bottom of that little bit, which will kind of bring us into January. And then in February is a big planning month. I take the whole team to Norway, and that's where we're going this year. And so the next 2 years are going to be the chase for 1 million. And then I've got a catch-up year if needed. So we got the first 2 years, the next 2 years. That's the 5-year plan. Is that 5th year is just a bonus, because I feel like we're going to get it in the 4th year. So the massive growth, what was the exact question about the growth? Like how we're handling it, or what spurred it, or?
I guess what spurred you to be able to, what I'm most interested in is not how you grew, but how, I think what's unique is how you approached it. Like you're not that far into the business and you're like, I'm building a team and I'm bringing in somebody to be in my office and do marketing. These are not things that usually people in their first couple of years of business have the courage to go do. So I'm interested in like your thought process there to be stepping out like that outside of the norm. I think most people that I've run into early in their business career are like, I'm going to get a couple of texts and I'll just do the rest. But you're like, no, I'm going to get help to do this because we're growing it somewhere. So I'm interested in like what's going on in your brain. Like what gave you like the courage and the insight to be able to do that?
Culture, coaching, and processes.
Okay.
So I've always believed no matter what you do, you should have somebody like I'm the leader to my folks. I need a leader for me, like a guiding light. And I've got a lot of those, maybe too many. I've got one of my favorite guys, Robert Rohr. He was president of Cox Media Group. We meet monthly and we just kind of talk about where my headspace is. I've got another coach, David, and another coach, Jackson, that help me specifically with processes. Because there's so many things that you need these people to be able to look at you, because they know me better than me now. They can look at me and be like, dude, you're stressed out about what you're talking about. You need to cut that tie. And I can be like, all right, you're right. So coaching is very important. Like Michael Jordan has a coach. LeBron James has a coach. Everybody has had a coach. So at no point should you think maybe I'm too proud to have a coach. There is nobody out there without someone above them. And there's a very specific reason for that. That's how nature is designed. So if you want to get with nature and you want to be able to do things as far as taking the path of least resistance, swallow your pride on some things, and that'll also give you faith. That'll also be able to leap bound, because you can look at these people that have made the same mistakes that you have, that you can bounce stuff off of, and they'll be able to say, like, look, I know it feels like you're dying. I know you're working from sun up to sundown, and you're so stressed sometimes that the wrong call can give you physical reactions. But once you do these things, you're going to get there. That's right. There's always a bigger fish, in a good way. So that's the coaching aspect. As far as culture, you want to, and this goes back to designing, you want to create an environment to where people feel like it's theirs. It's not Jeremy's business. I'm not a boss. I don't call myself a boss. I don't like people call me boss. I'm going to lead because I'm out there with you figuring things out. We're going to figure things out together. And everybody's opinion is valued. If you're going to bring somebody onto your team, there's a reason you're bringing them onto their team. So if you're not trusting them, and if you have to micromanage them and all these things, then why'd you bring them on in the first place? And that's another big reason why we have monthly outings. I pay my guys dollars on the base pay above any other company around here. Plus they also get 5% on upsells. So when I talked about that organizational chart, these guys that are lead techs now, they have a very clear vision for their own path within the company's path. So when you have things like that, when you have situations where, you just had this big 10 grand job fall through because there was miscommunication outside of your control, that's fine, because you've got the people that are bought in on their vision. They understand their path, and they are compensated well enough to where it's like, we can just revert and go over here. And I guess, so you got the coaching, you got the culture, and then the last thing was the processes. I'm going to repeat this almost with any question. I can add this in here. If I design a role to be able to create its own value, like what's the ROI on this role? I know this role only costs me $500 a month, but within that role, or $500 a week, like after taxes, base pay. But within that role, they're able to communicate with customers. So every job they're out on, they're creating marketing. So my technicians, they have 20% of their technician role is sales and marketing. So they're talking to people. Every job, they're putting a yard sign out. They're knocking on doors. They're putting up door hangers on all the doors around, because they're excited about fattening up their check. So I think it's when you have something that's well designed and you have somebody on you to bring you out of the mist of the fog, so to speak, and bring you back to your vision and hold you accountable, you can take those risks. And I will say this too, it's very, very, very easier to do when you don't have a family. I don't have kids, so I to people that are doing it with children, a lot of the business owners, that's a different dynamic to speak on completely altogether. A lot of other business over here have families, and so they have to be more calculated. Me, I only need $2,000 a month to me to be completely content, pay all my bills and everything. That's not a lot. You know what I mean?
No.
So I can take risks.
No, I can't imagine that. I'm like, I got stuck there, Jeremy.
Yeah, so that's leveraging my advantage.
Yeah.
I can be very, very risky because if I go some time, you know what I mean, where the money's less, if I don't pay myself for a month, no big deal. I've got a little bit of money saved up. I've got rental property that pays my rent. So I've got multiple legs on my table. There's not a lot of people at my table to feed as far as my personal income. So I can take risks and I can be very, very risky.
Do you hear this trash coming up on here on these comments?
That's Brad's whole food budget.
There is, this bears repeating though, Jeremy. I mean, it really does. Like I joke, but it bears repeating that when you are less exposed, when you have less hanging over you, it gives you freedom to make better decisions.
I'm a minimalist.
You know, and it's something to be said in your personal life. I mean, I go back to like my wife and I were having this conversation. We got a little bit of food. That's Nikki, by the way, with the commentary. We had a conversation on our way back from grabbing a little bit of food. And I was reminded of something I read 20 years ago in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You read Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Yes.
And I assume everybody has, but and he talks about like, we're so attracted to buying doodads, watches, cars, clothes, personal possessions, even our homes. And these things, you don't buy them with the money you make. You gotta put that back into something that's, he says, poor people work for money, rich people, money works for them. And these are simple concepts that have been around a long time, but it's like when you're not exposed, like you are, like you're not afraid of a slow month. That's big. And I think any guy going out there in business needs to be thinking about that. And it's not just how you're living personally, it's the way you're coming into your business. Like, don't spend yourself into a hole right off the bat so that it's like, well, if I don't do 20 or 30 grand this month, then this whole thing's coming burning down. Like, you gotta, right? But guys do that, right? They buy really expensive trucks and then they wrap them and then they buy really expensive trailers and they buy their way into a business. And then it becomes a burden that they can't overcome. They can't weather the ups and the downs, and there's going to be ups and downs. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. So you touched on a few things that like we definitely need to like just kind of hit again.
All right.
You talked about your lead techs have a vision for where they want to go. Mm-hmm. And that is so profound for you to share that. As business owners and anybody in here that started a business, we have a vision. Everybody's got a vision. Everybody's got a vision of what their life is going to look like today, what it's going to look like into the future. But as business owners, we take this risk to go out and have this vision. But the mistake we make is we think that our vision, other people are going to come work on it. And they're not. They don't care. Your team is only as bought into your vision as it relates to theirs. And that's so profound that like the people that are out there that are techs in your business, you're bringing them on and you're like, what's your vision for where we're going to go here? Let's create that. Let's create that together. And so like, then your vision has to fit over theirs. And I think that's so cool that you're doing that. And it's a concept that's just like, I just want to repeat it because it's like, I'm listening to you. And I'm like, you're not going to take 4 years to get to this goal. You're going to hit it quick because you're doing the right things. And it's like, you're building this team around you. How did you know? And I don't want to just talk at you. Like, I'm sorry, I get excited.
No, you're fine.
But like, how did you know that that was so important for your people to have that vision? Like, how did you know, like, wait a second, they need a path for them too, not just them on my path?
That's one of the things that came from my coaches, my leaders. And being an entrepreneur myself. Like the minute they told me that, I was like, oh, heck yeah, 100%. That makes complete sense, because that's why I left everywhere else. So it's tough, because a lot of times it's in the very language that you use in every single conversation. So a lot of times people will be just waiting up for me to say something like, okay, what are you going to say? And I'm like, well, I'm formulating it, because I've got exactly what I want to say. But instead of saying my company, I'm going to say our company. And then instead of saying, hey, go get this, I'm going to say, hey, do you think that so we can get your goals met, we gotta get you here and here. Would you please be able to go and pick this up? It's respect. It's nobody's gonna, just like you said, nobody's gonna work on just your vision. And if they are, those aren't the people that are gonna help you get far. So you've got to be able to tie everybody's mission in together. And that's one reason why I have so many touch points outside of work, and I put so much of the profit, into relationship building between the team. That's why I'm taking everybody to Norway in February.
That's so cool, by the way. Like, that's freaking awesome. Like, good for you guys for doing that. Like, that's really cool. I want to come.
I didn't want to go to Norway. They wanted to go to Norway. And then
it just sounds cool. Like, when are you going to go to Norway? Like, I assume you guys are going to see the Northern Lights while you're there. Like,
we're going to go to this place called, what is this? I can't pronounce this. Trolltunga and Geirangafjord. They're very naturey. I'm naturey too, but I gave them these options because I looked at these lists. I was like, look, where can we go that we don't need a COVID vaccine, and where can we go that the U.S. dollar will get us very far? Cross-referenced. Here's a list of 7 or 8 places. Where do you guys want to go? And they were all like, Norway, right into the chat. They're like, yeah, we got to go to this, and I was like, okay, there it is. And that kind of brings me into another thing. You've got to delegate decision making. You only have so many decisions that you can make as many decisions as you want in a day, but there's only so many decisions that you can make well within a day. And so that's why, like, you look at this hat, like this hat's falling apart. Like, I've had the same hat for years. I wear the same style of clothes. That way, when I wake up, I'm not at the closet like, what am I going to wear? I've got to save my decisions for making things better for the team.
A lot of profound wisdom in that. I really love how you're designing this stuff, and I hope anybody that hears this is like stopping, rewinding, and taking notes. What I hear is somebody who's like, we're doing something, we're on a mission here to do this, and we're going to design the thing, and we're playing for 5 years from now. We're not playing to pay the bills this month.
Nope.
Like, we're playing for the future. And if people do the things that you're talking about, you're giving me the answers. Why are you having rapid growth? Why are things working for you? It's because you're doing the right things and you're designing it. Like, big stuff. You talked about, like, not only creating that vision for people, you talked about how you ask people to do things. And it takes me back to something learned from Jocko in Extreme Ownership that I thought was really profound. Because I didn't serve in the military. My perception of that world is like, I'm the commander, do what I say, shut up. And he's like, it's not like that. He said, in our special forces group, it's not like that. If the guys don't believe in what we're doing, if they think it's going to get them killed, they're not going to do it. And he spends a lot of time, I don't know if you remember in that book, but he spends a lot of time saying that leading it's not about giving orders or pulling rank. It's about explaining to your team why we're doing what we're doing.
That's right.
So that's just, big concept there. And like, if people are working for a paycheck, they're just going to do enough not to get fired. And the biggest misconception out there in the workplace today, as we're hiring people to be on our teams, is that what's going to make them work for us and stay with us and want to be here is some money that we pay them. And it's not. No. Money's just enough to just do enough just not to get fired, do enough just not to get noticed. There's got to be something more if you really want to have people on your team that are going to move the needle. So I want to talk a little bit about why you're putting these positions into place and like what they mean to you. So let's start with like, you know, you've put in send him a new hat. I can send you a hat, but you might not want it. I mean, you've got a hat that works good for you. I don't think she meant it like that. I think she just meant I should send you a hat. But if that's those legacy dry fit hats, they're awesome. I've got one that is just torn to pieces.
So good, man. It's
yeah, they're like the most comfortable hats ever. So you brought in somebody to be an office manager. What does that role look like to you? Like, how do you, because you're talking a lot about putting together roles. So somebody's listening to this, right? And they're thinking, I'd like to put an office manager into place. How do you define that role? What's a successful office manager?
A successful office manager is a bulldog. And what I mean is they're the gatekeeper. They handle the lifeblood of the business. So when people call into 937-474-2611, they don't get me directly. They used to, but now they get someone who directs them like most efficiently. So to get specific, an office manager should be able, in my opinion, to handle simple quotes, to be able to direct traffic, to identify potential red flag customers and just sever the relationship there. And for one example, like everybody faces a challenge of price. So the office manager should be able to have that communicate or to have that conversation of, we're not competing to be the cheapest, we're competing to be the best. And so basically an office manager, they're the point guard of the team. They're alley-ooping the tech so they can come in and make that slam dunk. They're setting everything up. They're the front lines. The office manager is the front lines, and that's a very, very important position. So they should be. I mean, I've got an actual checklist of everything that office manager should be doing, but for the most part, they need to be handling calls, doing the emails, kind of filtering stuff out that's going to take up my decision making. So every office manager will be different, but you instill in them how you do things, and it's almost like a super assistant. Like they just know Jeremy is not going to look at none of this stuff. Any jobs that come in that are on the other side of the Cincinnati River that are only for like $150, no, sorry, we can't do that. Here's another company that can. So they're directing traffic, you know what I mean? They're the point guard, they're the QB, they're handling the lifeblood of the business. It's a very important role.
Absolutely. What's up, Pat? I had to look on my phone to see who that was. Mr. Pat Clark over there. What I really like that you shared at the beginning of that is you didn't start off with what they do. Your initial answer to me was who they were.
Yeah.
That's big. And that's something everybody needs to hear on this. Like when we talk about roles in our business, it's who are they? Who are we putting in that role? Not just what will they check off every day. And you knew that. Like, I know who I need. Here's what they're going to do, but I know who I need. Because if you don't get that right, they're never going to be really good at the what, right?
Exactly right.
So I do want to, and there's a question in here I want to get back to, but I also want to ask this. So you also talked about bringing a marketing manager onto your team. That's something people have a lot of confusion around. You know, do we do it on the team? Do we outsource it? Do I just get some agencies to do this? Maybe I need to focus on these specific tactics. Maybe I do it myself. What does that look like for you? Like, is it somebody that's part-time? Like, how are you putting that program together? Like, what does that look like for you? Because I think that's something everybody's going to want to know. Like, okay, so what's his plan for putting in somebody into marketing? Like, who are they? What does that role look like? You know, and then what are they going to be doing for me to move the needle?
It depends on what stage of the business you're in my opinion.
Okay.
Where we're at now, being a sub $500,000 company, the value of the task time that it takes if we had somebody full time doing marketing and I'm paying them, you know what I mean, $1,000 a week to do marketing, they would bring on so much business that we wouldn't know what to do with it. So right now it's outsourced. It's Brittany Ferrer. She's an awesome lady. She's running her own thing, Moonlit Marketing. Go check her out on LinkedIn. So we funneled through, I don't know how many people to find her, and she's awesome. So that's outsourced. It's a mix between social media posts, SEO, Facebook ads. You hear about those people everywhere, and they all have value, but who has the most value specifically for what you do? And for us, that's Brittany, because she understands how to get into Facebook and get into all these mom groups, as you would call them. I think as we move into the post $500,000 range, get closer to the $1 million range, it could possibly be outsourced, but maybe we buy up more of her time, or we just bring her on full time. Because then you can have, once you get to that 3 to 5 truck range, I believe, you'll be qualified enough to have somebody in-house full-time doing marketing. It also depends on where your skill sets are. My skill set is not in marketing. I don't like making posts. You know what I mean? So I will give that to somebody else to do all day because they're better at it. That's a lot. If you enjoy marketing, I know people that are very successful in that they outsource a little bit of the marketing, but they still do most of it because they're very present on social media and everything. I don't know if that's it.
You don't know? Okay. I was just looking around. I was gonna. Okay. That's okay. It's total sidetrack. I was just gonna give her a shout out. But look it up. Moonlit Marketing. I was doing it on the fly. So I think that's interesting. And like you do have to be cognizant. Like marketing's a deeply ingrained subject for me, but I didn't want to use this time to like share my thoughts on. People have to hear that enough. But so you kind of bring in somebody in outsource, and then the vision is like we do want to pull them in house when the time is right.
When the time is right.
The other thing that I think is that people have to be cognizant of, and you touched on this, is this concept that we have to know what jobs when we outsource something, we have to know which parts of it are things that we still have to help with.
Mm-hmm.
A great example, you talk about someone being active on social media. Nobody else is going to talk in your voice like you talk in your voice.
Yeah.
They just can't. They're never going to replace you when they interact with other people, when they do the actual social part of social media. The other thing that no one else is going to be able to do like you is create content. Someone can't sit remotely and make good content for you. They can edit it. You can get out your phone, make something, and let them turn it into something worth looking at. But you have to know when and what, where can they move the needle, and where do I still have to participate? So I like that you shared that in, and I just kind of wanted to bring that out a little bit. Any other thoughts on like, what you think, like what's worked well for you for marketing? Like has it just been pretty easy to get the business at this point, or is there kind of like something you felt like has moved the needle?
It depends on the season. When the fish are biting, we tend to put more paid ads out there because it increases the value we can get per ad because people are actively looking for it. But if you're in a slow season and you're doing paid ads, probably not a good idea because you're throwing out money because people may click on it, but they're not going to buy it right then because they're not looking for it right then. They're just kind of perusing. So in our slow seasons, we do a lot of guerrilla marketing. There's the constant guerrilla marketing of like the signs and the door hangers and stuff. But when you're in a slow season, we just kind of kick that up double and we don't do any of the paid ads. We keep a very small amount in the ads. That way the algorithm keeps building. That way when people start biting again and we can see that and we can dump more money into it and then it's straight away. You don't have that delay. That comes from tracking tracking everything. And I know everybody tells me all the time, look, you got to figure out where every customer has come from. But really, you get a good hold on it. Like, I know about a third of our customers are referrals because I do so many networking events. Because we get to bridge that gap between like, known, and trusted. Mark Perone helped me with that from Rethink Revenue. So that's why I'm on LinkedIn a lot.
By the way, Nikki and I want to applaud you for being active on LinkedIn and
thank you.
Taking advantage of something that a lot of people aren't taking advantage of.
I have no clue where they're
at. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I do want to address it. So Nikki asked a question. How are you shifting marketing for the commercial push? Like, how has that changed what you're doing to go out and get those commercial jobs?
A lot of that's LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is what I consider my commercial retention marketing platform. So when I meet people and I add them on LinkedIn, it's not like I still do the email marketing. I got an email monthly newsletter, but that's just because I feel like I have to do it. The LinkedIn really keeps me in front of people. The networking events keep me in front of people. What I like about LinkedIn is I get to shout other people out that I'm working with, which is a thing I love to do. Robert taught me that, Robert Rohr, that, if I just did a job for this facility management company, maybe I should shout out the guy who helped me get the job. More people are going to come to him. You know what I mean? And that's going to be easier for me to get work. Both people win. If I come over here and I'm cleaning the windows at every credit union, I should talk about, hey, come check out their rates on their new personal loans that you can only get if you're in these areas. Geotag these areas so people see that. And then the people that you're working with, like, that increases your value with the commercial clients. So the commercial clients will say, like, hey, this isn't just a guy that cleans our stuff, but he's also bringing us business and giving us exposure. And that takes no money at all. And those are the people, like, those are your pumpkins because they realize that and they do the same for you. And I think the big commercial push, so she's talking about the shift. So to launch pad off of that topic, I use the LinkedIn, but the reason why we're making such a big commercial push is just like you said, because we're in a recession. If you look at history, every time there's a recession, who ends up doing good? Property managers, apartments. People don't want to own, so they're leasing and stuff like that. So that's why I joined the Greater Dayton Apartment Association about 6 months ago. Because all this talk, you start, okay, I need to be spending my time. And now once a week, I have visits where I go and I just drop into these apartments. I give them a card and information. I don't try to sell them anything, but I just introduce myself, get visibility. They're within our target areas, Springboro, Centerville, Mason, Westchester, Lebanon. So they'll be able to see all of our signs. They're going to get our email newsletters. They'll get me adding them on LinkedIn. So they'll know, hey, he came into my office. Oh, hey, he also shot me an email one time. And hey, he gave us a call one time. Oh, he's also in the Greater Dayton Apartment Association. So that's that many touch points. And the reason, like, when you're the leader, you got to keep your eyes downrange. So I can't be worried about the stuff that's going on today. Like, I can't be responsive. The tasks that are responsive and urgent are not things the leader should be looking at. He should have the front men trained to do that. The leader should be looking at the tasks that are proactive and non-emergency. So I'm keeping my eyes downrange, building up the commercial for next year when the residential is harder to get. And like, that's pretty much what kind of spurred that was this talk of the recession coming up. So I'm like, well, you know what? We've got to build out our commercial side more because those people are going to do well. And so if that's where the fish are going to be biting, then you know what I mean? Ahead of the game, I've got to get there.
Is there anything else you're doing in your business? Is it mostly like kind of your relationships and marketing focus in your shift, or are you kind of doing other things to prepare to change as well?
I would say strategic partnerships. So I'm big in when bad things happen, it's actually a good thing. You just got to look at it the right way. So my rental unit, I had a tenant in there that wasn't paying his heating bill. And so therefore a water pipe burst and it flooded the whole place. This awesome guy I found on the internet, his name was Kane. He came out and he pumped all that water out of the basement, dried all the stuff so I wouldn't get mold. And I helped him while he was working back there until like 2 or 3 in the morning a lot of nights, dragging stuff in and out because it was just him running his business. And I was like, man, I know how it is. So I was helping him out, and we developed this really cool relationship to where now Kane, he does also a promotional business I had no idea about. And he has accounts with all of these car lots all up and down the East Coast. So me and Kane were developing this mobile wash program for these car lots, but we're also developing something that's more beneficial to me and him within these apartment complexes that being able to identify how much or so an apartment complex spends on landscaping, plumbing, pressure washing, and promotional between their now leasing signs when like school's coming up out near the college or something. All of that can be in a monthly package. So we're identifying a problem of property managers knowing they need to increase supply to meet the demand. So they're going to be already extremely tasked dealing with all these contractors. So why don't we bring them a family of businesses that takes away a lot of their responsibility so they can focus where their most value is. And so the strategic partnership kind of unveiled that I had never even thought of before until we're sitting down doing our monthly meeting, getting drunk, you know what I mean, eating chicken wings, just talking shit or talking crap. And then and stuff like that comes up. So when you have your mastermind of people and your strategic partnerships, you'll uncover rocks that nobody's even thinking of just hanging out.
Never underestimate what can happen over a conversation with beer and chicken wings, right?
Yeah, that's the truth.
No, I love that. I think that's really cool how you're being proactive. And are there other things that you're doing in your business, like kind of knowing that change is coming? Are there, I know that you're like really gearing up to have the right personnel, the right team. Like, is there anything else that like you feel like that, like, hey, I'd like to share because I'm kind of making these changes or I'm kind of doing this in my business to prepare for the shift?
Ooh.
I just don't want to miss anything. If there's not, it's cool. Like, I just want to make sure that we touch that, because I know we talked about a lot of other things in this conversation.
Not so much. I think a lot of it comes from how lean we can be, because when you have this recession and when it gets a little bit worse, a lot of the new companies, a lot of folks, they're not going to be there. And so when you can have your safety nets in place that other people don't have because they weren't thinking ahead, or they may have too big of a family to be able to keep pushing the business through a recession or this or that, it's going to thin the herd. I know that it makes me feel bad to think of it like that way, because there's a lot of my peers who I see that are just like me, but that I'm maybe not going to see in a couple of years doing this because the recession is going to thin them out. But when you're lean and you're operating well, you're going to be able to hold through those down months, like you said, or those down year or a down year. And then you're going to catapult on the other end because you're going to be positioned to absorb all that work when it stops ebbing and starts flowing.
I know I grew up around construction, and I tell this pretty often, but we haven't talked about it. My dad built houses when I was growing up, so I grew up around that. I became a home builder. And he said, when things are good, he said, everybody thinks they can build houses. He said it takes the down times to work some of that back out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not fun, but it has to happen. There is a cycle that unfortunately has to happen, because really in a business, and we can all think of it this way, we don't want everyone doing our business. And the good news is if we figure out how to survive when things are hard, we are positioned to, go to the moon when they get good again. And they will. They will. They always cycle. Everything always cycles. So I want to touch on this before we go because we're kind of coming up on an hour and you've been so generous with your time. But I think you've done a really good job with this. You've invested in yourself. You have found, a group of coaches. It sounds like you have a mentor who you're working with. I think this is a point of question for a lot of people. Like, they're like, yeah, I want that, but they have no idea how to get it. So Jake asked, what would you say to a new company or any young company or any entrepreneur who doesn't have that and they're looking for mentorship? What advice would you give them about how to get it, where to look? Just like anything you can share on that, because I think you're doing a really good job with it.
I would say the worst possible thing you could do is just go to Google and look for mentors or anything like that. The best thing you could do is just network, get in front of as many people as possible, and then be authentically and like unapologetically you, because they'll find you. Like, you're not going to be able to just pick a person and say, hey, you mentor me. You're just going to have to go out there. It's like, have you ever drove by somebody who was broke down and they're just sitting in their car and you're like, oh shit, sucks for you. But then if you drive somebody that's broke down and they're pushing your car, you pull over and you help them push. So if people that are in the position to mentor, they see you grinding, they like you, and you're being real, you're radically transparent, that opens up the net, because a lot of these guys, that's what they love to do. When you're successful and you're truly successful, not just money successful, but truly successful in your heart, mind, and soul, you want to help other people get there. And that's what I thought. I never looked like, hey, will you be my mentor? I was just networking, making mistakes, being open about the mistakes I'm making with people. And then they just kind of trickled in place and said, I can help you with this. Let's meet up once a month. And blah, blah, blah. Because they know you're not going to waste their time, and they're going to be able to give in to you just like somebody gave in to them.
I read a post the other day that I shared because it really resonated with me, and I thought it was good advice, or maybe self-affirming advice, but good advice nonetheless. And it said that a CEO should spend 70% of their time on relationship equity, 20% on their time on marketing and branding, and 10% better knowing their numbers. Now, when you're new in business, you got to wear all the hats. You don't just get to wear the CEO hat. It's just one of the hats you get to wear sometimes. But I've found too, just like you're saying, in my own career, there is nothing that comes close to the value that comes from making relationships. But the key in that I believe is you got to focus on the relationship. You're not looking for people to do something for you. Like, if you do that, you'll repel everybody.
Yep.
And you'll never have anything meaningful. You'll miss out on the good stuff in it. But if you just focus on, I want to find people worth having relationships with, who share something common with me. They're working towards a goal. Maybe they're ahead of me. Maybe they're in with me. I heard, what's this guy's name? Really like his stuff. But anyway, he said, forget like trying to find people talk about you'll be just like the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? He said, forget trying to find 5 people that are ahead of you. He said, you can't do that. That doesn't work. You can't spend your whole life around people who are further ahead than you. It's just not realistic. He said, I like the rule of 33. He said, spend 33% of your time with people who are where you're at, grinding it out. Find the relationships, spend a third of your time with people who want to be on the same path as you, who you can kind of interact with and network with. Spend 33% of your time with people who have already been where you want to go, who are pulling you up. And spend 33% of your time with someone who you're reaching down and pulling up. And I just love that. Like, I was like, heck yeah, that's what it is. But it's all about relationships, man. And I love how you touched on that. I love how that seems to be a common thread that runs through everything you're doing in your business.
Yeah, I would say it is.
Well, Jeremy, this has been really, really awesome. I love the things that you've shared. There's so much value in this conversation for anybody that sits down and listens to it. If you just heard it, listen to it again. There's some real nuggets in there, and we didn't really dig at all of them. Some of them were coming pretty fast at different points in time, but this has been one of the best, and I'm not just blowing smoke, man. I mean it. This has been one of the best things I've heard about a blueprint about somebody like, I want to go out and start a service business and I want to get on a path to be successful. Like, there's a real blueprint in this conversation, and I appreciate you taking the time to share it with me and with anybody who tunes in and hears this.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, and hopefully we can continue our conversation.
Oh, for sure.
I look forward to just chatting more, man. It's a total pleasure. So, anything else that we didn't cover that you want to get in there?
Oh, if you guys have time, go check out the victoryproject.org. It's our new donation sponsored program we're doing. Once a week, I cut a check to these guys, helps disengaged youth get business opportunities from the inner city. They get to get in front of the police and build that relationship. They get to see what the life is like with the military, see what the life is like with business. And that's kind of something we've instilled in our company. Whenever I make this check, I send a blast out to the guys. Hey, we got another this or this much money that just got donated to the Victory Project. They get all hyped up. So if you get a chance, go check out victoryproject.org. My friend Monty Bush over there is doing some amazing things.
Awesome. Check that out, guys. Well, thank you again, Jeremy. You're welcome back anytime to come be on the show and come jump in the conversation. Guys, it's been another episode of Under Pressure Live. Don't forget, check us out. We have the podcast on YouTube. Subscribe, check out anywhere you do podcasts, Google, Spotify, Apple, all those places. And we do regular interviews as well that don't come out live. So make sure to go check those out. Jake has done some amazing interviews in the industry, some real movers and shakers in this industry. I know he'd love to interview you sometime, Jeremy. He did say, ask him. I want to do a regular podcast interview with him sometime. So, yeah, he couldn't come tonight. So, but yeah, make sure to check it out. We always appreciate questions, comments. We really want to talk about the topics that are on everybody's mind. But thanks for listening. If you're here at the end of the show, you're awesome. Thanks for sticking around, and we'll see you guys next time.